Hello and welcome to the latest Royal Roundup from talkTV. So pop the kettle on, this is the Royal Tea. I'm Sarah Hewson. After one book has torn the royal family apart, could yet another be on the way to wreak havoc yet again? But this time, it's got nothing to do with Prince Harry. Joining me in the studio to discuss that and more are royal commentator and talkTV regular Afua Hagan, former press secretary to King Charles and the late Queen, Dickie Arbiter, and the Evening Standard's royal editor, Robert Jobson. Plus, I'll be speaking to royal commentator Victoria Arbiter in New York, who's going to give us the American reaction to Harry and Meghan. So it's been reported this week that Prince Andrew's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, has signed a deal to publish a memoir. Can Andrew survive this? Rob, I'll come to you first. We know that last year when the settlement was reached, although we didn't know the terms of it, neither of them could speak out. There's believed to be a gagging order under the terms of the settlement. Some reports that that's coming to an end.
Yeah, it's odd, isn't it? It's odd that that was a deal that was struck anyway, because if there, as my understanding, the deal also said there was no blame on either side. And there was no culpability on either side. So therefore, what's going to be in this book, if that's the case? And surely if there's a book coming out that then reintroduces allegations that were out there in the first place, then someone's going to be able to sue. So I think it's an odd deal that was struck in the first place. I would have thought that if you settle on a figure, then it's done. It should have been locked down by the lawyers, but we'll have to wait and see. It's a damaging time for the royals if it comes out just ahead of the coronation. But they seem to survive most things, and I'm sure this will, be the same.
Dickie, let's pick up with you. When Virginia Giuffre took this civil suit against the Prince, included in it, at the centre of it really, was this photograph showing her with Prince Andrew with his arm around her and Ghislaine Maxwell, supposedly taken in Ghislaine Maxwell's London home. An interview this week with Ghislaine Maxwell speaking from prison. She's said again that photo was fake, and she's said that you can't rely on Virginia Giuffre's memory. Is that any help to Prince Andrew right now?
I don't think it's any help to Prince Andrew at all. I don't even think Ghislaine Maxwell's interview this week is much help. She claims to be a friend of his.
He's tried to distance himself from her,
He tried to distance himself from her, but she claims to be a friend. She's rubbishing the photograph. She's alleging that he wasn't there. You can do anything with photographs, and I think Ghislaine Maxwell's pretty desperate, and she's prepared to say anything.
She's got an appeal.
She's got an appeal coming
underway,
up, so
yeah.
she's prepared to say anything. It's Andrew who's been pushed up front as being the sort of naughty boy of this whole sorry scenario. There are a lot of other big names, and why haven't they come out?
And I fear that the timing of all of this, that the talk of Andrew potentially challenging the terms of the settlement, the talk about Virginia Giuffre potentially with a book coming out. We are 100 days from the coronation today as we're recording this. How much do you think this could overshadow the coronation? As last year we were talking about this whole case potentially overshadowing the Platinum Jubilee.
I mean, the timing is pretty awful, isn't it? And if you have a situation where perhaps this book could be coming out, which could be incredibly damaging. Last week we had reports that Prince Andrew was working to get his titles back, or he wanted to get his titles back. You have Ghislaine Maxwell speaking this week as well. To be honest, the royal family want the focus to be on the coronation and on none of this. So the timing is absolutely terrible. I do agree that Ghislaine Maxwell has done no favours for Prince Andrew this week whatsoever. She's an unreliable witness. I mean, she's been convicted of crimes. She's in prison. She's behind bars. She can say and do anything at this point. I mean, I think Prince Andrew will probably be thinking, look, don't even bring up my name in this at all. But yes, he's probably thinking about how he can also clear his name, his side of the story. That settlement, which we don't know how much money was paid, it's thought to be up to £12 million.
Some figures have revised it down to more like 3 million now, haven't they? We just don't know.
We just don't know.
To a charity, though. It was paid to the charity.
Exactly.
Allegedly.
And we don't really know the ins and outs in the terms of that deal, but he could be thinking about working to clear his name now as well, especially if this clause comes to an end, as well as Virginia Giuffre talking he could talk as well.
But his timing's not right either, is it? I mean, the coronation 100 days from now, and he's wanting to start proceedings. I mean, it's absolute nonsense the way these people are behaving.
And Rob, well, one detail I found interesting in the reports was that the king is apparently happy for him to pursue this, which seems bizarre. And yet then I heard a lawyer suggesting that if Andrew launches an appeal against this, then it kind of puts a hold on it. So if there is, as has been suggested, a 12-month gagging clause which is due to come to an end, then perhaps that would be extended and that might cover the coronation.
I mean, I think there might be something in that you know, by putting we know these things are not sorted out straight away. They go on for months and months and months with lawyers involved. So you push it into the long grass until after coronation. But as on the photograph, I remember looking into that for a long time ago, and they cannot find, there's no original negative to this, and the FBI were looking into it as well.
Virginia Giuffre said she handed the original to the FBI.
She also says in another thing that there wasn't, and so there's all sorts of other things that have been said. Her evidence, you know, to be fair to Andrew, is pretty unreliable. The Gersowitz case has proven that, and you know, at the end of the day, though, I think that really, having done this deal, the best thing that Andrew should do is just go live quietly, because he's not going to be able to get his position back. People are going to think there's no smoke without fire, and all he's doing by pushing to carry on his royal role is to damage the institution he wants to serve. And I think he's done his service, and it's time to let that now be with the other members of the royal family.
And the Dershowitz case you refer to was another case that
Alan
she'd taken
Dershowitz,
against Alan Dershowitz, the US lawyer, which she's dropped and said she was perhaps mistaken in identifying him.
But that's a major point, that, because the Alan Dershowitz said, by her saying I was mistaken, it's a major flaw for lawyers to jump all over.
To say she
They
can't
should
be
be the
relied
same
on.
Yeah.
There are also reports, Dickie, that Andrew has been telling friends about a development, a mysterious, unnamed development to come in the next month that might restore his reputation. I mean, is there anything in that?
I don't see it, and he's talking about the next month because next month is his birthday, and he's probably hoping that he's going to get a wonderful birthday present with his name cleared. Well, it's not going to happen. He's probably hoping to have all his titles back. That's not going to happen either. We know full well that the king wants a slimmed-down monarchy. There is no place for Andrew in it. And he's got to learn to accept that.
Absolutely.
And he's just got to go play golf, go and cut the lawn, go and do something, but stop hammering away all the time, trying to pretend that you're going to get back.
Is he potentially hoping that he can find himself a spot on the balcony for the coronation? Because we have, over the last week, Afua had the details of the coronation weekend, the 3-day weekend announced, and we know that there is going to be an appearance by the King and Queen Consort and members of the royal family. But who?
I genuinely don't think he'll have a place on that balcony. I think it will be like we had at the Platinum Jubilee, that will be working royals only, restricted to the balcony, which I think is absolutely fair enough, and that will probably mean no Harry and Meghan as well.
I think you should go even more than that. I think that I was talking about this earlier. It doesn't matter. You've got the King and the Queen.
You've got 7 members of the family who are working.
Yeah, but I don't even think you need any more than the core royals, which aren't even including the Princess Royal and the Wessexes. I just think you just need on that balcony the King and Queen and the Waleses and the Waleses children. That's the core royal family.
Although, I mean, you know, Princess Anne is relied on an awful lot to carry out the duties of the monarchy.
Maybe for the last appearance, but really to try and focus people's attention on the fact that this is a cost-effective monarchy for the future, and this is the future. Rather than, I think that when we had all of those people on the balcony before, it gave the impression there were a lot of hangers-on, and it was costing the taxpayer a lot of money. I think they've got to give a new impression going forward, and that's an ideal opportunity to do it.
Let's talk about some better news for the York family this week, because Princess Eugenie and her husband Jack Brooksbank have announced they're going to be having their second baby this summer, Afua.
And wasn't it, it's such a cute post, a picture that was posted on Instagram. Jack took it of Eugenie and her son August kissing her baby bump, and it was really, really sweet. A nice modern way to announce, definitely. So yeah, it's good to have a boost, some good news. The royal family really, really need that right now, and take the focus off what we've just spoken about.
But it was good. It was good
else.
news, but she spoilt it. She spoilt it with 2-year-old August. He's going to be 2 next month, saying he's going to be an eco-activist. Let him be a child. Let him grow up. Let him decide then what he wants to do. But don't say
this was her speaking at the Davos summit, wasn't it? And she talked about him.
He's going to be an eco-activist.
I don't think she spoiled it in any way, shape or form. I think she was just talking about, her son and making it relevant to the conference
you might want
she
to
was
drive
at.
a gas-guzzling Aston Martin, so I don't know how she knows he's going to be an eco-activist.
I suppose he is the generation that are going to feel the greatest impact of what is happening with climate change right now.
Let him be a child first.
We've had the director of Harry and Meghan's Netflix documentary accusing the palace of trying to discredit the series. Liz Garbus suggested she'd been given an insight into the alleged palace mind games the couple had complained about. That was a big sigh from you, Rob, so I read that out.
I think number one is we shouldn't really call it a documentary. I think it fails on every level as a documentary. It's more like a docudrama.
Wasn't even that.
Or a docu-series.
Drama, end of.
They didn't do it in the correct way. They didn't make an approach to the palace. It was done in a way that I think made it very difficult, to know who they were when they did the approach. If they were just saying, we are here from the documentary from Netflix about Harry and Meghan. Have you got any comment about it? It's pretty clear who it's from, but it was done in a typically underhand way. And I think actually they're just trying to drum up even more publicity for something that's had more publicity than it probably deserves.
Well, I wonder if that as well, because has it not been somewhat overshadowed by Spare? Because when we were talking about the Netflix documentary, and we thought this was, this was all very dramatic, then Spare came out and Netflix, what?
Well, Netflix didn't get their money's worth, did they?
Not really.
When they read Spare. Look, they say they approached the palace, which was a stupid thing to do anyway, because the palace would never respond. I know in my day, we used to get asked for comments about a documentary. As soon as you start giving comments, you're creating a narrative that plays into the hands of the people that are making the documentary. In this case, you're playing into the hands of Harry and Meghan. You don't say anything, because if you deny something, they'll say, okay, then what happened?
They had to approach them, they had to give them the
on.
right to reply, even though they weren't going to reply, but then they didn't do it in a very straightforward way, did they?
What is Liz Garbus's complaint about the palace trying to discredit the documentary?
I think,
Afua, what does she mean?
I think what she's saying is, we did everything that we thought we should do. Like you said, Rob, they do have to give the palace the right to reply. And they knew that there wasn't going to be one. Harry and Meghan would have said they're not going to say anything, but we have to be seen to be doing that. And I think perhaps she, the documentary maker, not Harry and Meghan, thought that the palace actually might reply, and maybe she was surprised when they didn't.
We had all this row about whether the palace had received
and I'm also surprised that she was surprised that they didn't get a reply. Do you know what I mean? Because I could have told her she wasn't going to get one.
What she's saying is, what Harry and Meghan have been complaining about, well, I've now seen it, I've now witnessed it.
They're naive. They were naive in their whole approach, expecting the palace to reply, expecting the king and the Prince of Wales to reply. They would never do it.
Now, as is every week, we get more and more ratings, polls, approval ratings, disapproval ratings, however you see it, for Harry and Meghan and the royal family. What do we think about the way this has been received, Spare in particular, particularly in the United States, which is probably the audience that they're most interested in?
I think America is, don't be kidding. I mean, there's been a lot of people interested in it, and they've got a lot of supporters in America. There are a lot of people in America that still believe the royal family is a racist organisation. Trust me that they do. I mean, I do a lot of work with American networks. I think that what is interesting was what Dickie was saying earlier about a lot of the big sort of showbiz upfront names, the glitterati, the ones that can't help themselves commenting or supporting them, have been a bit quiet about it, because some of the stuff has been really ridiculed on American TV. These late night shows, which are very, very big hitting in terms of numbers, have really ridiculed Harry. And what has amazed me is how quiet Meghan has been about it. I was expecting a big sort of gushing, well done, Harry, but I think maybe it's to do with various things we don't.
Silence is deafening from there.
Well, is she damned if she does, damned if she doesn't? Because I mean, if she'd been with him on the talk show circuit and everywhere he went, she'd probably have been accused of trying to steal his
Mind you,
thunder.
it'd be quite
Yeah, I
difficult to
think
sit there
so.
as he talked about the creams and the losing his virginity and
I mean,
various things, wouldn't it?
I think she was happy for him to, I mean, it's his book, it's his memoir. She was happy for him to go out and tell his story, sit and do the interviews. And I think you're right. If she'd been there, then the focus would have been on her. And people always said she was stealing the limelight. She makes it all about herself. He can't go out and do an interview by himself. She has to hold his hand. And now that she's taken a back seat and let him do his thing, and she's accused of not being there, letting him do it all by himself, you know, literally, she could walk
She
with
can't
her.
go to a dress fitting without him being there, according to the Netflix documentary.
But it just feels like you're right that she's damned if she does,
Silence is deafening,
and
I
she's
think.
damned if she doesn't.
Well, let's get the view from across the pond now. I spoke to royal commentator Victoria Arbiter, familiar surname, Dickie's daughter, a little bit earlier on to find out what the Americans really think of Harry and Meghan. Victoria, thanks very much for joining us. Now, you're based in New York. What's your assessment of the reaction in the US to Spare?
There's certainly been a lot of debate about Harry and Meghan standing here in the US. And I think the commentary has really focused on this idea that Americans are railing against the couple and that their popularity has plummeted. But I think a lot of that commentary misses the broader context. Yes, this is a vast country. It really is huge. So on the one hand, there are a huge number of people that like to follow the royal family. They're very knowledgeable about them. They enjoy watching their activities. They like the fashion side of things. They really understand what it is that the monarchy brings to the UK. Equally, the Sussexes have a diehard band of followers who will defend them no matter what. But I think the other group is much bigger, and it falls into two categories. There are those that simply don't care. Americans don't have any skin in the game when it comes to their relationship to the royal family. So they're much more concerned with domestic issues. And then, interestingly, there are others that just don't know who they are. They don't care to learn who they are. They couldn't really identify the key players. So I think to just say Americans don't like Harry and Meghan is too simplistic.
Now, we had polling from Newsweek that suggested their popularity had nosedived. Is that accurate, do you think?
There's certainly been a lot of suggestions to say that Harry and Meghan's reputation has nosedived. A recent poll conducted by a US outlet found that, yes, their popularity has slipped quite dramatically in the last few weeks alone. But I think we have to take polls a little loosely. The number of participants in that particular poll were 2,000. This country has a population of 330 million.
What do you make, Victoria, of the tone of the media coverage, both news coverage, but also the late night talk shows, how they're handling this?
I think the media has definitely taken a shift in recent weeks in terms of their coverage of Harry and Meghan. Following the Oprah interview, there was a huge amount of sympathy. They made some very startling allegations, particularly concerning race, accusations related to the media. And I think there was a huge amount of sympathy here for everything that they went through. But then, of course, Harry did the Apple TV series. Meghan had her podcast. There were a number of interviews, the James Corden interview that came out shortly before Oprah, followed by Netflix, and now Harry's book. And I think having heard the story so many times, the media started to lose a little bit of patience. And I'm speaking broadly here, you know, not everyone in the media has had this reaction, but left-leaning publications that previously were Team Harry and Meghan no matter what were expressing criticism. That was new. The late night comics had an absolute field day. Jimmy Kimmel went so far as to create a whole illustrated book about Harry and his frostbitten parts. That was incredible in terms of its mockery of Harry. Even Stephen Colbert had Harry on his sofa to talk to him, and yet there were moments where he was sending up the royal family. I don't think Harry realized that he was sort of a butt of a joke as well. So all of that is new. And I think that really is just in response to the fact that Harry and Meghan have told this story so many times. And there are a lot of the problems that they raise that the average person simply can't relate to.
Do you think this has panned out the way the Sussexes would have planned it to?
It's very difficult to speak for Harry and Meghan in terms of what their overall objective was with the Netflix docuseries, with the book. I think Harry, with his book in particular, was very keen to get his side of the story across. So mission accomplished in that regard. He he doesn't hold anything back. As anyone who has read the book knows, he's very willing to share every facet of his life. So in that regard, I think, yes, he has achieved his objective. Having said that, I don't think the book was received quite how he was hoping. Certainly there are people that remain hugely sympathetic to him, but there's been a lot of criticism. So the public, the broader public, is talking about him in a way that I think he perhaps didn't anticipate. I think they thought there'd be a similar level of sympathy to that following the Oprah interview. So I think they probably have been quite shocked. You know, Americans in general are a sympathetic bunch, and I am generalizing when I say that. And I think Harry and Meghan have enjoyed that level of sympathy that they perhaps weren't given in the UK. But I think they will have been shocked by some of the negative pushback. I don't think that was expected at all.
Well, that's what Victoria had to say. Dickie, I want to get your thoughts. What is the end game here for the Sussexes, do you think?
I would like to think that the end game is that they've said everything they want to say. They've said it in documentary, they've said it in a book. Now go away and do your philanthropic work, do your charitable work. Don't bring out the fanfares all the time and expect people to be standing on the sidelines applauding everything you do and every time you open your mouth. Just get on with what you were going to do instead of trying to be celebrities, because celebrities you ain't.
Rob?
Well, they're driven by money, and to get the money into the bank accounts for either the charity or themselves, they've got to be in the limelight. And no matter how much charity work you do, that's not going to get them in the limelight in America. There's going to have to be a story or something more to it than that. So I suspect they'll just carry on, and if they don't get what they want, attention, which is what it seems to me, then they'll find a way of doing it.
What do you think 2023 has in store for the Sussexes, Afua?
Well, Harry said that when he was sat down with Tom Bradby from ITV, that the documentary and the book were the last of the look back projects, and the things that we're doing in the future would be looking forward. So I think they're going to put out content, whether that's films or documentaries or more podcasts about things they believe in, about charity work that they believe in, that they're passionate about. So I'm looking forward to them creating that inspirational, aspirational content. I think that's what they'll be wanting to do throughout the year.
It's not box office though, is it? I mean, that's not going to be what... I mean, they're dominated by money here. They're driven by corporations and PRs and people that want them to make money.
And they're dominated by celebrities.
And therefore, they're going to have to do more than, oh, look at us doing good. Do-gooding is not really going to sell you. It doesn't sell.
Depends if Meghan has political aspirations.
Well, I think maybe that's maybe behind it, but we'll see.
Well, if she does, she's got to get rid of the titles.
That is all we've got time for this week. My thanks to Afua, Dickie and Robert. We'll be back next week with all of the latest on the royal family. We hope you can join us. We'll see you then.